Hey everyone, it's LS, and this is the patch 9.16 notes rundown. I am hoping that that I will not be losing sanity by the end of this, but we're gonna jump right in. I saw some of the balance changes that were tweeted out by the balance team in recent, like a week ago or something, right? So I expect to see a lot of changes in this patch, and then I'll try to talk about what it might end up doing for competitive, because competitive's been the main thing that I've been complaining about for a while. So let's just get right into it. Pantheon. So actually, I saw a lot of Pantheon's stats. He has really high base MS, I believe. He has 355. I don't know what role he's supposed to go. He has sort of like a pike interaction on his Q. He still has his stun. His passive's really interesting, I guess, but I don't like how they kind of mixed up the Q and the E with the passive thing in regards to the old Pantheon. The new Grand Skyfall is really, really cool, but I don't know where Pantheon will actually fit in. I guess I would want to see all of his ratios and whatnot, but he looks interesting, but I've heard bad things, so I don't know what that means. Okay, Azir, Q cooldown increased late, 15 to 5 seconds to 15 to 7 seconds. So let's look at the most important one. One of the most important ones is rank 1. And then the second most important one is rank 3. So we'll notice that Azir actually only has a 1 second cooldown increase. Now, the thing about Conquering Sands is that they're mostly used when you have multiple soldiers up, the position is correct, the stars sort of are aligning for it, and you're trying to poke them down with Q. It's not an ability that you necessarily just spam every single time that it's off cooldown on Azir, and so having only 1 second on it at rank 3 isn't really that impactful. And then in the end stage, obviously this can impact him a little bit, but I don't think that this is really what is magically making Azir be picked in the mid lane. It's more so a byproduct of every mid laner just sort of sucks. So the fact that he's only getting 1 second taking off of his rank 3 means that Azir's still going to be doing everything that Azir wants to do, but we'll have to see what else happens in mid lane to see if he ends up getting hit. So 2 seconds off, or 2 seconds onto his Q. I mean, it does equate to a bit of damage in late game team fights, but depending on, I mean, if you pick Azir properly, rather than just picking him to pick him and blinding him and then just scaling up for arbitrary reasons and then taking an arbitrary team fight, then Azir will still be good. If you just pick Azir completely blind, and the enemy team composition drafts around it well, then you're going to feel the nerf a lot more in competitive, and then obviously it'll feel infinitely worse. But anyways, Corki, base attack damage and attack damage growth decrease. So this is a big nerf to Trinity Force. One of the questions that I have now on the attack damage and the attack damage growth is, does this mean that his CSing underneath turret is now somehow different? Do Corki players need to learn how to CS underneath turret differently? Obviously, the patch just went live, so I don't know if that's the case. I can't go into Sandbox and just test it. Attack damage down by 5 is quite big, and then attack damage growth, he loses a longsword at level 18. So in total, he's losing like a longsword and a half, which basically means Corki's down an Infernal Drake in, later stages of, well, more than that, but, or less than that, I'm sorry. But the Trinity Force getting hit is one of the unsung things about this. So, well, it's probably not unsung, given that people probably know, but I'm not liking how this patch is going. W, tenacity flattened, E cooldown now scales. With 4 patches worth of smaller changes already under the belt, the Mad Lad's been asking for something more substantial. I don't know. Wait a minute. I don't know. Wait. Anyways, W, Burning Agony. 10 to 30%, 30% at all ranks. E, Masochism, 6 seconds to 6 to 4 seconds. This is obviously pretty insane, getting the flat 30%, because then if you have Merc Treads in some matchups, then you're just going to be an absolute monster, especially depending on what your runes are. It'll help Mundo's early game, and it's also going to help his early into mid-game spike, but his late game is roughly going to end up being the same. So in spots where the enemy team has a lot of magic damage and they lack a lot of CC, Mundo is pretty okay. One of the problems is that everyone in the world has a fucking fetish for Morellonomicon, which is a little bit weird. And then, in addition to that, he can be drafted around pretty easy just by having good team compositions that hold phalanxes or have high amounts of CC and whatnot. So, Mundo situationally, I already believe that he's a really, really strong pick situationally and that no one's using it, but that's an entirely different topic. Ekko, E bonus damage increased, R decreased late. Ekko has room for more power in all areas of play. E phase drive 40 to 140 to 50 to 150. R chrono break 110 to 70 to 110 to 50. The chrono break cooldown isn't that big at all because you don't really, at none of these ranks do you really feel it. Even late game, you're only using your ultimate once. Maybe, you know, a very, very small percentage of the time, a team fight goes super extended enough and you're somehow still healthy to use it twice if you have max CDR. But realistically, your ults like this are almost always placebo. E phase drive, bonus damage. I mean, getting an extra 10 damage is sort of nice, but it's not magically going to make Ekko okay. Ekko is sort of a byproduct of what else is going on in the mid lane. I do believe that if you can play Ekko like the Chinese mid laner, whose ID I forget, he's the Ekko god on Korea. Basically, in solo queue, he'll only elect to play Ekko, even though he can play other champions, evident by the champions he's played in LPL. But if pros could play Ekko like him, I think that Ekko would probably be an S-tier champion. Just no one can actually play the champion like him, which is pretty interesting because we don't get a lot of champions like that where only one person in the world can actually play it. Even champions like Riven, there's several players that can actually play Riven. So anyways, Ezreal, Q AP ratio decreased, E cooldown increased. AP Ezreal's burst has made him a bit of a terror, so we're taking some power out of the build and hitting his early game safety. The thing about Ludens on Ezreal as third or fourth item or whatnot, I feel like it's been decreasing in popularity, so this is a bit of a strange change. Then again, I was told a long time ago, I believe by Jat, that balance changes for competitive tend to follow 2 patches prior. So, balance that we're seeing for competitive on 9.16, I believe, occurs due to 9.14. So thinking back to 9.14, maybe this actually makes sense on Ezreal, but my memory is failing me. Q Mystic Shot going down by 0.115 ability power is not the end of the world, but if you were doing something like the Ludens and then you were going like the Liandry's Torment, which is something that I've advocated on many, many champions lately because Liandry's is sleeper broken, this obviously can impact him. Arcane Shift 19 to 13 seconds to 25 to 13. Obviously, this gives you a massive window of opportunity to hurt him because he won't get access to this until level 13. Then at which point he'll end up being the same. So for the 80 Ezreals that go for Iceborne Gauntlet, Miramana, Blade of the Ruin King, etc., Ezreal's basically going to be the same champion at level 13, and so if you're picking him for that reason, he's going to be completely fine. Inside of the laning phase, obviously he'll be a little bit more vulnerable, but it's definitely not something that you can't play around. So Ezreal players in competitive will be fine. Ezreal players in solo queue should have been staying away from the champion anyway. Fiora, E cooldown decreased early, bonus attack speed now scales, giving Fiora more strength to capitalize on momentum she gets from a lead in lane. E, blade work, 13 to 5 seconds, 11 to 5 seconds, okay? Bonus attack speed 50% at all ranks, 50 to 90% at all ranks. So, this is a sizable change for Fiora's split pushing ability. The issue with Fiora, though, is that she can only often come in on red side. Seldom can she come in on blue side. It requires the enemy top laner to have already picked, or it also, as the meta is evolving in to a certain extent, it requires the enemy mid and top to have already been picked, because Fiora does have a lot of vulnerable matchups. It's definitely a change that can probably have some micro effect on her percentage win rate, but they do seem like they're trying to potentially push Fiora, and Jax, Q cooldown decreased, Q leap strike, 10 to 6 seconds to 8 to 6 seconds. This is really big for Jax. I feel like Jax is already actually a pretty strong champion that is competitively viable in select spots, much akin to Mundo, as I mentioned earlier. Getting a flat 2 seconds off in the early ranks will definitely help his early game tradings, pre and post first recall, second recall, and whatnot. Jax will definitely be a lot stronger. One of the issues with Jax as well is he's one of the few champions in the game that it doesn't matter how far he falls behind, as long as he ends up getting to his items, he's always going to remain relevant. So Jax is getting a nice little buff. Kassadin, W basic attack damage modifier increased. So let's see. Empowered basic attack 40 to 140 plus 0.8 ability power to 70 to 170 plus 0.8 ability power. This is massive because I believe that this is a 7-second cooldown. So at max rank, getting a flat 30 damage for free, especially because it's an auto attack reset, is so big for Kassadin. It doesn't necessarily do anything with helping him underneath turret with farming or anything. It doesn't change any of his trade patterns up or anything in that regard, but his counter matchups will definitely feel a lot more painful. People will have to respect his rift walks a little bit more, because this can definitely ramp up to 60 to 120 damage during certain recall phases, like maybe level 7 or something. It can definitely ramp up. Even in the early stages and select matchups, this can actually ramp up to probably 120 to 150, depending on how good Kassadin can actually weave in his W against certain champions while using Force Pulse. Is that the name of his E? Caster, by the way. LeBlanc QAP ratio increased. Q Sickle of Malice 0.3 ability power to 0.4 ability power. It's a little bit weird. They give her a buff, which is actually really cool. It's just not one that I would have been expecting. But we're getting actually quite a lot of buffs right now, even though it's followed by some arbitrary nerfs. The Azir and Corki stuff didn't, like, I've been very adamant about this. I know that I tweeted about it. I know that there was a Reddit thread about it. I know that a lot of people tweeted at Riot about it. I'll be completely honest. I'm actually a little bit frustrated that it seems impossible to get a reply. Blastoise is actually really good at reaching out and replying. Maple Nectar used to be a god at trying to give context and clarity and all this other stuff. But it really feels like the current way that Riot tweets out like balanced stuff is they just sort of throw it out there and they don't actually care who replies. The PBE doesn't clearly matter at all. Because I'm just waiting to see, does Tahm get actually nerfed in this? Let's see. Did Tahm actually get hit? Of course he did. What the fuck are you doing? Alright, so anyways, Lux, W shield increase late. W prismatic barrier, 50 to 110 to 50 to 150. Max shield, 100 to 220 to 100 to 300. So, the way that I'm looking at this is that Lux probably has good skin sales. Because it's very peculiar that she was only left out of the meta for an extremely short period of time and then somehow brought back in. So it's definitely interesting to me. She did disappear off the face of the earth in Korean solo queue, it seems, to a certain extent. She's only picked in favorable matchups rather than just being an outright blind. So getting a little bit of a buff back to her, I think, is completely fine. I just wish that they would actually buff other mage supports or bully supports in general. That would be really cool in stopping the Tahm and Braum without having to cripple these champions and then reassess their balance state later. Weird how that would work. Nocturne, base armor increased. W bonus attack speed increased. Armor up by 2. Health up by 2.2. Mana up by... what? Yeah, I'm sure this is what's gating Nocturne. This is it. Max! Max, you there?
Hold on.
Max!
Wait, I'm gonna get him.
Alright, you get him. I'm gonna make sure to save this spot.
I got him.
Max, come on in here. Take a look at this. Now, you might have been wondering, where's Nocturne, right? You probably think that he's been overshadowed by some of the other junglers as a competitively viable option. So I got the buff for you. Hold on. Shut your mouth, close your eyes, and just listen to all this goodness. Try not to orgasm on my floor. Okay. Alright? Armor, 36 to 38. Health, 58. I'm sorry. 582.8 to 585.
That's 3 HP.
Mana, 273.8 to 275.
That's 2 mana.
Don't say I didn't treat you good. Mana region, 6.756 to 7.
That's no mana. It doesn't matter.
Now, for the this is it for the prestige. You ready? Shroud of Darkness, 20% to 40% scaling bonus attack speed to 30 to 50%. Will you clean that up? He's back, right? He's back? Max?
Isn't... Okay. Yeah, he's back.
Yeah, he's back in silver. I'll tell you that much.
He's back. He's too strong.
The reason he's back in silver is because he was in the bathroom while on the clock. That's what's going on. And then someone called him out. They're like, doesn't a nocturne work here? They go into the bathroom. He's on his phone texting Riot Balance Team. Yeah. Oh my god.
You have to work. Get some armor.
What a joke. Alright, Riven. Q cooldown flattened. Q broken wings. 12 to 10 seconds. 12 seconds at all ranks. This doesn't... I don't like when they do this. Riven's not broken.
Riven's just fine.
Riven is completely fine. Riven is... I think she's bad. I don't think that... I think that she's bad in the sense that she can only be picked in very, very select matchups. And in addition to that, she can only be picked against select team composition. She's sort of like an AD version of Mundo. Not in the way that she conducts herself inside of the game, but the fact that there has to be other stars that have aligned for her to be picked. So it's really sad to see a nerf come in. Because I get really frustrated when game design will balance... maybe it's a damned if you do, damned if you don't sort of a situation. I feel like there's the other alternatives, which is to buff other champions, right? But when you nerf things to make it easier for the people that can't do these fundamental things, you end up hurting the game. Imagine if Nintendo came in and nerfed Fox in Melee. Or imagine if Nintendo came in and they nerfed Marth, or they nerfed Falco, or when Armada was dominating, they nerfed Peach. Imagine if an Ultimate Joker got nerfed because of Leo. You're not doing anyone a favor, and there's no way that this player or these players are magically just going to keep winning until the end of time, especially with how close some of the sets go. So it always makes me feel very uncomfortable when, Riven is only an NA thing, right? It's an NA problem. It's not a KR problem. It's not a China problem.
No, there's like one Riven player in high it's Pi 9 and then some pro players play Riven.
I feel like it's an NA problem, and so this definitely just feels like a balance change that was catered toward a region to keep them happy. So, Sejuani, Frost Armor, Base Armor, and Magic Resistance decreased, ratio increased, Q cooldown increased, Passive Fury of the North, Frost Armor 20 to 10, plus 0.35 bonus, plus 0.35 bonus Magic Resistance, Arctic Assault 17 to 11 to 20 to 12. It doesn't really impact her all that much. In the late stages of the game, Sejuani is still being picked for the reasons that she would be, and in the early stages of the game, the cooldown is not impactful enough to really matter. So, Sej will still be picked, but there's definitely a lot of junglers that are not being picked right now that can outpace and just offer more than Sejuani. But anyway, Shen, Q empowered damage ratio increased, E base damage increased, Q Twilight Assault 4 to 6% of the target's maximum health, 5 to 7% of the target's max health, E Shadow Dash 50 to 150 to 60 to 160. So I actually feel like this could have an effect on support Shen if he would end up coming back. Obviously, top lane Shen is in a pretty finicky place right now. The issue is that so many champions just actually counter him, which means he can only come in as a counter pick, and then he also has to fit the mold of the team composition. So the buffs are actually really, really nice. The buffs are super, super nice, but I just don't know. I don't know how good it's actually going to be, but Shen just got actually quite a lot of damage on his Q and his Z. Singed, base mana increased, our bonus stats increased late. Negligible, negligible attack speed growth increase. Maybe this has some interesting interaction. Our Insanity Potion, 30 to 80 scaling to 30 to 90. So you mostly have to look at rank 2. So it's 5, and then you get 10. Yeah, Singe isn't coming back. Sion, base mana increase. Q base min and max damage increased. Remove damage reduction on monsters. Smoothing out some of Sion's rougher edges, like rounding out his base stats and removing a mechanic that no longer seems needed overall. He'll have more chances to brawl with his opponents in the top lane, especially with other fighters. Mana, up by 5. Nice. Health, up by 2.5. Mana regen. Decimating Smash. Base minimum damage, 20 to 100 to 30 to 110. Base maximum damage, 60 to 300 to 70 to 330. Remove reduced damage on monster. Decimating Smash only deals 80% damage against monsters. So obviously that's potentially good for Jungle Sion. I just don't think that Jungle Sion is actually going to be a thing. So, although I don't know. I don't know enough about it. Maybe this is actually something that was gating it, the 80% against monsters. I can't imagine that that's actually the case, though. It just seems like he would get outpaced by so many junglers. He doesn't itemize with the same level of efficiency as some other junglers. So, Sivir, W-AD ratio decreased. W ricochet, 50 to 70% attack damage to 30 to 70% attack damage. Sivir didn't need to get nerfed. Other ADs just needed to be buffed. That would have been completely fine. But anyways, Sylas, Q2 damage reduction now applies to minions and monsters. I don't know how many patches in a row this is, or how many, the percentage is actually whack, the number of patches that Sylas has been in. Detonation damage, 45% reduced damage against minions, and monsters, okay? Hijack. Sylas now probably heals himself when casting a hijacked R mantra-empowered W renewal for Karma. That's a great bug fix, amazing. Syndra, Q bonus damage against champions increased, E base damage increased. Dark Spear, 50% bonus damage against champions, 25%. E scout of the week, 70 to 250 to 85 to 265. Just in time for Worlds, huh? Syndra's like the Undertaker in WrestleMania. She's always there. So Azir and Corki get nerfed, and in the same patch, they massive buff. This is such a gigantic buff. They massively buff one of their counters. Why didn't we just buff LeBlanc a little bit more and buff Syndra a little bit more, and then buff Ekko a little bit more, and then watch as teams have to think about which ones they're gonna pick? That'd be really strange how that would work. Anyways, Tahm Kench, base movement speed decreased, E shield duration decreased, 345 to 335, E thick skin, 3 seconds to 2 seconds. You guys don't know how to balance them. Yuumi, Q empowered damage decreased late, slow decrease, slow duration flattened, cooldown increased early. Q powering projectile 50 to 275, 50 to 225, slow 40 to 80%, 20 to 80%. Slow duration 1.25 to 1.5 seconds to 1.5, so it'll be more obnoxious early on and for early ganks, but then it'll start tippering off. Cooldown is also up, which I guess is a little bit obnoxious because that means that Yuumi's going to be dealing a lot less damage in the lane, but it's not the things that are making you pick Yuumi, so in that sense it's still going to be fine. I just got to go back to the Tahm Kench thing. I mean, this is an interesting thing where they probably actually need pro players to just chime in, because I highly doubt that even some of the higher MMR Riot Balance team members actually know what is causing Tahm Kench to be obnoxious. What creative solutions could they actually come up with? Because I refuse to believe that they're reaching out to anyone. I mean, you can actually just make him disappear from the meta by buffing the mage supports that hurt him and Braum and Alistar and other melee supports like that. If suddenly champions like... No, I mean, it doesn't even matter. I've talked about them on Twitter, you know, to ad nauseum. But there's so many other ways to balance the champions instead of just throwing it into the pit. I mean, we did this with Quinn. What other champions did we do it with in recent times? Did it with Fizz. Fizz got thrown into the pit. Fizz got buffed and then thrown into the pit immediately. Tom's in the grave. It happened to Quinn. happened to Wukong. It happened to Victor for a long time. Victor got basically saved due to the interaction, or due to his ability to interact with Kleptomancy and the stars aligning in top lane. But even then, I actually don't think that he was that good. Galio was thrown into the grave. Shaco was thrown into the grave. There's so many better ways to balance champions. I mean, Riot could undo the last like 4 or 5 nerfs on Tahm Kench, and that's changed so many things up that would make him so much better. Make his rank 1R only able to carry himself. That way he's still able to carry his allies at rank 2, so at level 11 and whatnot. You can have a on-target lockout, just like Sylas on his W. You can increase the on-ally cast W cooldown to be a little bit heavier. You can keep the grounding and whatnot. There's so many creative ways that you can actually come up with stuff. Because one of the things right now at ganking Tahm Kench in bottom lane is you gank him, you get him to use the Devour. Or you take a trade, you try to get the Devour, and then your jungler comes in and tries to gank him while the Devour is still on cooldown. The thing, though, is that if you somehow now magically have an on-ally target cooldown of 60 seconds or something per target, the window of opportunity, or the window where your jungler has to force the gank, or you have to try to forcefully kill the opponent, is now dramatically increased, and it's also balanced for mid and late game. So Tahm has more weaknesses, he has more vulnerability in the earlier stages of the game. This allows you to also undo all the things with his passive stacks, with Acquired Taste, the R range, and all this other good stuff. It allows you to nerf his base damage, or it allows you to nerf his base damages and then increase his skill damages, which then allows him to return to top lane, where he actually wasn't a menace until he started getting the Q slow back, and then other changes and whatnot. There's so many things that you can do. You increase the cooldown maybe on Thick Skin, you make it more abusable or something, you can make it... God, I mean, there's just so many things I can actually think of. Ziggs, WAP ratio increase, cooldown decrease. Art cooldown decrease, late satchel charge 0.35 to 0.5. Wow. Cooldown 24 to 12 seconds, 20 to 12 seconds. R Mega Inferno Bomb. This one's interesting. Normally I say that ultimates are placebos. I feel like this one is interesting. Getting 10 seconds off at rank 2 could be impactful because of the way that Ziggs can actually use it to wave clear lanes. And then getting 20 seconds off at rank 3 is also useful because of late game or end game scenarios where Ziggs can actually fix a side lane just by himself without actually leaving his team. And then because the cooldown would be short enough during a Baron stalemate or a Baron dance, he'd be almost able to have it up again. Biscuit delivery. Biscuits delivered 4 to 3. Delivery interval 3 to 12. And 3-minute increments to 2, 4, and 6. Health per biscuit 15% of missing health to 10% of missing health. Health per biscuit monolith champions 20% of missing health to 12% of missing health. Mana per biscuit 15% of missing health mana to 10% of missing mana. Healing duration 15 seconds to 5 seconds. Permanent mana increase 40 mana per biscuit consumption to 50 mana per biscuit consumption. So I don't want to say that biscuits are dead, but they're only going to be picked in really abusive matchups where you're really just trying to put forth the war of attrition. ARAM balance changes don't really matter all that much. Honor Capsule 5 will contain a random emote. That's really cool. And the random skin. We're unifying Challenger and Grandmaster 0 LP demotion rules with Master's existing rules. This mainly has an edge case change, since losing LP over a few days or weeks naturally demotes the player into Masters before they reach 0. Okay, losing a game at 0 LP on Grandmaster or Challenger demotes you to Master 0 LP to Diamond 1 with 75, 50, or 0 LP based on whether your MMR is higher than the Master cutoff. Between Master and Diamond 1 cutoffs, lower than the Diamond 1 cutoff. Okay. Upcoming skins, so I know this is what you guys are all here for. This looks like Thor and Aquaman had a kid, and I'm not liking it. And then Hextech Ramus. This looks pretty cool. You know what? This is giving me a World of Warcraft classic vibe. And then this is Nicol Bolas's horns over here. So even Magic the Gathering is getting involved. And then this is probably some new Planeswalker. I don't even know. So I guess that's what Tezzeret has been up to. This is actually a pretty cool looking skin. I actually do like it. I think this is the better of the two by far. So Hextech Ramus does seem pretty okay. Let's recap competitively and solo queue wise. Competitively, Corki did get hit. Solo queue, Corki got hit, but Corki already got hit because teams don't scale up in solo queue. Azir, competitively and solo queue got hit, but competitively still going to be completely fine. For the reasons that you would end up picking him. Dr. Mundo, situationally, he's already really good. He just got that much better. Ekko, probably buffed just because Syndra's in the same patch or something, and historically, Ekko's considered one of the answers to Syndra, but I think that if Syndra plays the matchup well enough, then things are fine. However, if pro players could play Ekko like the Chinese LPL player, whose ID that I forget, I think Ekko's an S-tier champion. Ezreal is still completely fine. All this ends up doing is it hurts the Luden's Echo and the AP variant builds, but in recent weeks, I think that a lot of people have just been choosing the AD version of Ezreal, in which case he's completely fine. Fiora E blade work change is nice, but again, stars have to align. Jack's change is also nice. I don't know how much this means that we'll end up seeing him again because stars have to align. Sort of. Jax prefers to be on blue team, but most likely in competitive, you're going to be picking him on red side. And so because of that, he's going to need more edges. Kassadin change is actually really big. Do I think that it's enough to magically propel Kassadin back into the meta? No, because every single champion that is being buffed and changed in this patch, with the exception of like Ezreal or something, and Syndra, I guess, to an extent, they require so many other things to be present so that they can be picked. And this is a fundamental problem with a lot of champions in League right now, where a lot of champions in the current meta, especially at the pro level, they're not picked because they're necessarily good. It's just that in all categories, they're not as bad as other champions. So Kassadin's really interesting because of all the other changes, but it's not going to be enough to magically propel him. But this is a massive buff for solo queue Kassadin. For competitive Kassadin, the areas where you can pick him are already pretty thin, even though I do think that he's really powerful, just like Mundo, just like Jax, etc., in certain spots. LeBlanc buff is really cool. Lux buff is cool. Nocturne thing's a joke. Riven thing's a joke. Sejuani thing's a joke. Shen is actually really, really massive for support Shen and for top lane Shen. But again, stars have to align. Shen is not a champion that you can just pick blindly and go into everything, especially not with the volatility of the top lane meta right now and the champions that exist up there. Singed change is a joke. Sion change is a joke. Sivir change is a joke. Sylas change is a joke. Syndra is probably the best buff in the entire patch. It's actually probably the best buff that we could have asked for. I think that it's a fair buff. It comes online in mid-game, and then the scatter of the week will obviously help out with early game damages, lethal thresholds, and everything, especially because you can hit 2 scatter of the weeks during a laning phase on your own, so you're basically getting an extra 30 damage, pre-resistances, which is quite nice for Syndra. Tahm Kench thing is just, I mean, it's really stupid. Yuumi change is balanced. Ziggs change is actually really nice, but again, Ziggs, I've talked to many pro players over the years. A lot of them actually think that Ziggs is just too hard to play. I know that Deft like playing him bottom lane, but in terms of like mid lane Ziggs, the general consensus that I've heard from pros is that he is viable if you're really, really, really good, which is sort of like Anivia or Azir, but I guess that Ziggs is just not the same type of champion to get the same kind of following amongst pros. But anyways, Biscuit delivery change is sad, but I mean, it's only going to be picked in super abusive matchups anyway, and then upcoming skins, just get yourself Ramus, and they get honor level 5, okay? Don't be toxic. Don't be toxin. All right, that's it for the rundown. Overall, it's a much better patch than I was expecting. It's actually a good patch. We've only had, I think, 3 or 4 good patches in Season 9. This actually is a good patch. So there's lots of buffs. Some of the nerfs are jokes, like these two. And this just completely whiffs the ball. I really, really feel like they would benefit so much from having a pro player, I almost want to say pro player consultants, but I know that they do reach out, or at least Jat did. Jat would reach out to analysts, and he would reach out to pro players, I believe. I don't know about the other balance team members, but I feel like there would be so much benefit if you just talk to pros, because some of these things just completely whiff. But, oh man, I guess I'm just crazy or something. All right, thanks for watching.